first of all, thank you to all. Okay, so because you are actually enabling this whole drive, so that's why, like, that's what I have been telling to everyone from the starting, that you definitely need to listen to these guys, because they they are building and helping us this whole shape up this whole industry. So thank you so much to all of you. And yeah, off you go, guys.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Naya, good to see you. Hi, Adul. Hi, Vidit.
Hi, Rahul.
Hey, Rahul.
Great to have you all. Sorry to keep you guys waiting, but super excited to be doing this. And I'm going to start shooting some questions. Before than that, a quick background on my wonderful panelists. So Air Black is helping thousands of women become beauticians, and it's all about learning from each other. So we're going to dwell into how a community plays role there. Baby Chakra is perhaps the largest community of going to be moms and moms, if I'm correct, where they guide each other before and post having kids. Mudrex crypto, I guess, in itself is a community, and which is exploding, by the way. And I doubt there'll be one person on the call who's not a part of some WhatsApp or Telegram group related to, crypto, where people decode what is crypto, blockchain, DeFi, and so more. So, great to have you all. I am going to shoot the first question straight, right? Naya, maybe we can go with you. How did the thought of community come to you? And this is definitely, I'm going to go to all of you. But how did the thought of community come, and how did you start building it?
Sure. So I think, it was about understanding who our audience was and how did they learn, right? So, I mean, if you're looking at parenting and pregnancy, especially, specifically our category, you're looking at building out a very high trust platform at the very outset, right? And the way people build trust in people, and how, and people trust people who are part of an extended community. So we were seeing, just as background, Rahul, I was working in maternal and child health earlier, right, at McKinsey, and I was working and actually building out these large programs on improving MCH outcomes in metros, tier 1, tier 2 cities, right? And I was like, how are people learning on changing behaviors? And they were learning from each other. So it was a no-brainer in some sense on how do you replicate that offline behavior to an online paradigm through communities. But of course, like with online, there are a couple of many sort of innovations and tweaks you have to make, which we'll talk about through this conversation. So I think that's really where the idea came from. How do people learn? How does your community learn? And how do they build trust?
Sure. With it?
Can you come again, Rahul?
Yeah, sure. I was just asking, how did the whole community part come, and how did you start it?
So in our case, the entire genesis was that people come in together and they have these shared experiences, and eventually they go on and become makeup artists, right? All of them start from zero. Given the entire genesis of the product is use these shared experiences to learn with each other and eventually reach a common goal, community was at the center of it. Because unlike, let's say, a subject like physics, which is very theoretical, makeup is art, right? And learning from an expert, learning from each other contribute to the end outcome. So the entire product was centered around these shared experiences, having this common sense of belonging, and then reaching a common goal. So we actually built the entire product in the center of micro communities. So that's how the entire genesis came along.
Yeah, so I think communities are front and center for Mudrex and have been since effectively day one. We originally started off, our community experiment from the perspective of sharing knowledge and growing knowledge and building our user base and so on and so forth. But today it's expanded to essentially being our sounding board as to where should we drive our direction in terms of product development, give us feedback on monetization, and be as such our kind of sort of biggest fan base, right? Like our community has been like our first 1,000 true fans that have helped us grow to where we are. So very front and center to everything that we are doing. And now we are running multiple communities internally at Mudrex based on DeFi for our core product and so on and so forth as well.
Got it. One, just a question out of curiosity, right? Like we all understand that community plays such an important role, and with it, maybe I can shoot this to you because Air Black practically started in the travel domain, right? And there are certain giants, right? There's so many, companies which probably, are in the travel space, right? why are we still seeing that only a bunch of companies are focusing on communities? What is the blocker? I mean, why doesn't hypothetically naming, why doesn't a Make My Trip have the largest travel freaks community, right? And I don't mean to pinpoint MMT, but be it any other company in the travel domain, let's say.
I mean, I'll probably try to approach this from first principles, but for instance, any company that I know of, which is probably starting off today or last year, I can't think of like many who are not focusing on building an audience, right? But probably at the era when these companies started, since they were like transaction-first businesses, social media was not big. You had to sell a product and then you had to get the audience. But today, actually, like, it's possible to get the audience, combine them with your mission, and probably then sell products, right? So it's the why now question, right? I mean, today it's possible to do that. Probably the era that they started in, there was only one way to sort of build like a large community, which is like sell product and then have that common thread going on. So that would be my sense. And I mean, once an organization also becomes big and the DNA that the organization ends up having also sustains over time. So it's difficult to change, right? So, but I mean, if you look at all the larger companies also, Rahul, I think everyone's starting to focus on, trying to build some sort of audience, going to build their niches and communities. And I believe Make My Trip has done a phenomenal job also pretty recently in doing that. And so many other companies in travel space otherwise also are doing it, right? So today it's not an option to not have an audience that doesn't relate to your mission as much as, let's say, your employees do, right? So it's not an option anymore.
Yeah. And Naya, just over to you. I don't think building communities isn't easy. We definitely know that, right? I mean, probably otherwise LikeMinds didn't exist if it was that easy, right? But essentially, what challenges did you all face? And this is a question I'm gonna go to all three of you, right? Like, what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome some of them?
Sure. So I think just seeding a community is one of the toughest parts to it, right? To creating a community, because it's about like if you enter a party and there's no one really at the party, right? Then there's no party. It's as simple as that. So I think in the very beginning there was a lot of of our own team members who were people who had that mission and that passion to sort of create the largest parenting community for moms. And they were seeding the initial content, and they were basically trying to figure out trends, and they were trying to figure out what is top of mind for mothers, and they were creating the initial sort of conversations, right? And then they sort of started referring their friends and their parents who felt that they sort of resonated with the need for this sort of a product. And that's how I think the first initial seeding was the toughest. I think also simultaneously, I think Vidit talked about this a little bit, right? The tools for community building are tools that we see today. If you think back, about 3.5 years back, when you were talking about sort of algos that were, the back end, the front end, both, right? And also sort of the latency that we were experiencing at that point in time, right? It wasn't a mobile first universe that we see today. And community inherently is, someone said this in one of the previous conversations, right? 24/7, 365 job. And if you want to build a community, the community needs to have that experience as well. So you can't have a community inherently built on, though we did have Orchid and all of the other stuff, right? But, you're talking about a very different paradigm. So I think the tools, of course, front end, back end, the data democracy, as I call it, for us as a community, for mothers, for women to come online, the mobile first approach, I think all of that has taken its own sweet time, but now it's here. So I think were the two main challenges, the seeding as well as sort of just the technology stack and the data stack.
Amazing point, Naya.
What's that?
Amazing points, I'm saying, like two on point. Lovely.
Just to continue, Naya, what's still missing?
Lots. I think trust tools. Trust, and also I think micropayment tools, because you're sort of looking at a paradigm where creators use communities to thrive, and for thriving they need to make money except from like sponsored ads and things like that, like which completely dilute our community experiences, right? So I think these two things, in fact we talked extensively about it at Baby Chakra, right? Because when you're looking at building trust, you have to create a network which is even Facebook has like these realms of humans who are sitting in Hyderabad and they're sort of managing posts and they're saying this is obscene, this is not, right? And that's also subject to interpretation. So I think, and therefore, how do you sort of bring in and we keep on talking about AI, but like, what is AI, right? You really train it and it's so subjective and so contextual. So I think if we can solve for the trust equation, like really solve for the trust equation in terms of how communities interact with each other and the kind of content they create, and trust in the context of like-mindedness as well of communities, which is so tricky to do. And I think the second piece in terms of how do we sort of empower creators and community managers to have these micropayment options at scale, I think that will be a complete game changer.
Sure. Edu?
Yeah, Rahul. So I think seeding is by far the biggest challenge when you're getting started, right? Like getting your first 100 folks, getting your first 200 folks. And I still remember reaching out to so many people, having those first initial conversations by myself. And then like every single day, our goal would be to talk to one more interesting person who could help us create that first initial set of 100 folks coming in. Right? But I think once you've got your community kickstarted and set up, and as you are continue to grow and scale them, I think what has been the toughest problem for us as an entity to solve for is essentially engaging and encouraging these community members to become first contributors and then evangelists. And how do we transition from one to the other to the other, right? And I think that has been fundamentally one of the bigger problems that we are still working on and trying to figure out. And I think over there are quite a few challenges of understanding what's the skill set, how do people want to approach it, how much do they want to contribute, and then trying to fit the right knack with most people. And for that, we've also started to do things like doing exclusive community calls, getting exclusive channels where contributors can come in and put in suggestions and so on and so forth. So those have been some of the more interesting and challenging points for us now that our community is at a decent scale and now it's growing and rapidly evolving. And especially in a business like crypto, where our users are global and we've got members from like 80, 90 different countries participating on our platforms, it was really difficult to find cultural similarities and connects, right? So as a result of that, getting them to engage and contribute also becomes very important.
Interesting. With it,
I think I both they and Edul echoed the same things. In my head, it is if you think about original communities, like you think about religion or you think about sports, everyone had a shared set of purpose, but there was a monetization engine flowing, and hence there was a clear incentive in a limited number of people to keep that community flowing. So when we have to sort of extend that idea to even micro communities and other communities, community creation is a full-time job, and that's what we spoke about in the last few hours as well, right? But this incentive to keep the community growing, like as a brand, I have an incentive to keep the community growing, but how do sort of independent community entrepreneurs go ahead and do that? So I completely echo the same thoughts as well, that for having sustainable communities getting built out, there needs to be like someone who has that incentive, and hence monetization, various ways to monetize sort of need to flow in. And I also echo the same thoughts.
Got it. Audience, please put any question that you have in the chat. Would love to take them. Okay, let me. Since you brought this up with it, I want to probably ask you. How do you measure the success of a community? What kind of matrix do you set for it?
So in our case, when we define when we think about communities, right, and the kind of comparables that we look at are all these like smaller experts and influencers on social media who spend like years building these 20,000, 30,000 member communities. And the common things that we see is that if they tell their audience to do something, they just go mad and do it, right? And if you look at larger people who have like these millions of followers, that's not true. There's a layer. Like there are people who are like loyal followers and there are people who are fans, right? So in our case, the subjective way to look at it is that if you tell your people to do something, do they trust you enough that they will blindly do it, or they will go ahead and get influenced, right? Now, when we think about it from a product point of view, in our product, the community is created when someone buys a course, right? So there are like these tens and thousands of people who bought like a paid course. Now for them, there are various free sessions and free sessions that are available based on their interest on skincare, on creating Instagram content and so on and so forth. And we clearly know what their interest is. So for us, turnout is a very good way to measure the loyalty of a community. I mean, it's similar to retention, to be very honest, but we measure event turnouts because we know that when these people bought these courses, whether that was a 499 rupee course or whether that was a 15,000 rupee course, they said that they're interested in something, right? So are they actually turning out, or are they actually completing the course, right? So that remains like the North Star for us to measure whether we are doing well. And the second thing is, of course, how delighted they are, which is the other way to look at it. But we look at turnouts in our product, and because that's what they bought the membership for, or that's what they bought the course for, right? So in our case, it's turnout.
Got it. Naya?
So we have a fourfold metrics. One is evangelism, engagement, retention, and behavior change, right? And the way we look at it is evangelism is, I mean, basically it's like how many people are referring other people to the platform. By the way, I think it's interesting, not too many people know this. We've actually got 3 different distinct communities in Baby Charcha. One is of moms, second is of influencers, third is of doctors, right? So the evangelism component is really interesting to sort of see play out across these 3 different cohorts, right? Engagement, of course, like how much content is being generated, read. So, like 45 million pieces of content, how many live chats being done, etc. Right? Retention, we know the drill, right? We all look at our retention cohorts, and it's that, I think for us, we look across life stage, locality, region, language. Like we have like a bunch of like different communities, right? So we look across retention metrics very, very closely. And the last is behavior change, which is really interesting. So, because Baby Charcha comes from a place where, of course, we're looking at impacting families at scale, right? We are part of families at scale. So we track very closely how are people changing their behaviors in terms of nutrition, breastfeeding, their own sort of self-care, post-pregnancy, through pregnancy. But equally now we have a commerce stack. So part of our behavior change is also how many people are actually co-creating products with us and also converting on those products. So that's how we look at measurement.
Interesting. Arul?
Yeah, so I think for us, we value communities, since primarily our community is to get people to share knowledge. We, of course, measure it from one perspective of how many quality conversations happened in the community, and how are we driving more and more and more of that. And I think just like how there is customer success, what we started to look at is like community success, which means that how happy is your community, and then are we trying to achieve goals of our community or not. So we're interestingly figuring out different approaches like NPS kind of a score for whether are people happy with our community in terms of what are we driving and so on. So those are some of the different metrics that we are trying. And we have different approaches across different communities as well, right? For example, our Discord community is our largest, by far most interactive setup that we have. But then we have communities on Twitter. We've got communities that we are running in parallel who are our newsletter subscribers and followers, right? So building up different things for different versions of these communities.
Interesting. On that note, Naya, I just want to get back to you. I mean, how do you keep community fairly neutral, right? Like members don't feel that, hey, we're here and being sold something, right? Like there's a hidden motive, right? Like they should ideally, I feel the community word means that you're a part of a tribe, right? You're enjoying that, you're getting something, you're giving something, definitely, but you don't want to be like sold something or your data being sold, right? Like, I mean, and I think you already spoke that we need more trust tools, right? So yeah, would love for you to throw some light on that.
I mean, it's a fantastic question, Rahul. And I think it's the reason we actually pushed out building our commerce stack till so late, which I wonder. I mean, sometimes I regret that. Sometimes I'm like, that's the right answer. I don't know where I'm on that, honestly. But I think the way we sort of come around to building out, so, even our commerce stack actually is now a function of community. So, we recently, last year, we started launching products, which are, I like to say, India's first co-created products with moms. We've launched them based on like literally every process of, which products to launch, how to brand them, what to call them, what like ingredients they'd like to see in them was created with communities of mothers and doctors. And in fact, so much so that when we've launched about 6 products. I mean, literally and I'm not kidding, we've not spent any money. They've all been Amazon's like hot new list, bestsellers, top choices. And on Baby Charcha, they've been extremely successful as well. And that's because people feel a sense of belonging, right? You're engaging with them as part of the process. And, I think it comes from a part where they have seen Baby Chakra's journey, right? They know what we stand for. They know our mission. They know our values. So when we're bringing in products, I mean, the values still resonate, that we want to improve and we want to be part of a parent's life and improve it and make it the best, help you be the best parent you can be. So I think when people see that, they resonate with it. And I think it's actually been a great experience for us to co-create this commerce stack with them.
Yeah, and interestingly, one of the things that we've noticed is that the more you ask of your community to be a part of what you're trying to do, the more and more they want to be involved, right? To the extent that a lot of times they get hurt if you take decisions without consulting them, and that's the beauty of where you want to get to, right? When you're focusing on building communities out there.
Yeah, where with it.
This entire thread is very ironic because I mean we've also faced this similar journey which Naya faced, right? If we've got a community, of course we have to make money of it also to make it sustainable. But over time our learning has been that one, if we also personally think of, like, stop thinking about sales as anti community and versus think that okay, can you drive sales by thinking that you're adding value to the customer, you'll take the right decision. So for instance, like we have this makeup kit that we end up selling to people, but we now only sell it to those people who come in this session where we discuss makeup kits and then we co-create the kit with them, right? So versus, let's say initially it was like, okay, someone has attended 3 sessions, can we go ahead and say that they will be a nurtured lead? I think that's not the right way to think about it. In our experience, the right way is that, okay, if you segregate your community via products and you think that you are adding value to the life of the person by selling them the right product, then your incentive and the community's incentive are aligned. But I think initially we had a pretty difficult time also figuring this out. And we went into that entire conflict of saying that, okay, how can we not affect the trust of the community by selling them something, right? So that's been our journey too.
And I so relate to that actually, because like literally, and I think we've tried all sorts of experiments, sorry, just on that note, right? Because, on Baby Chakra, people are discussing their problem statements as well, right? So we actually track interest tags, we track question tags. So we've actually tried experiments, like if someone's asked a question about eczema prone skin for the babies, can we then recommend a product, right? Or can we, like if someone's asking a question, is engaging in a session, I think to Vidit's point, right? Can we then, is that a good place for us to bring in products? So we've tried all these journeys out. And definitely, I think that's the point where you sort of meet the need and the product, and that's when you create value.
There's one interesting exercise we started doing 2 months back, which is like we started thinking of tag, like all our products that we sell as a part of our content calendar.
Yeah.
So I mean, instead of thinking as products as separate and content as separate, we started thinking as, okay, we have to add value to the life of the customer, and hence we are giving them content. Think of product that way, and which has actually helped us a lot in taking the right decision.
Yeah.
That's been one learning too in the last few months.
In no more than 15 seconds, you can answer this. 2 unfair advantages you got out of your community.
Okay.
Adil, you go first.
No, so I think product direction and our first 1,000 paying customers.
Naya.
Okay. We built out what I think is one of the most trusted brands in the whole moment, right? Not just in India, but globally, thanks to the community. And you'd be surprised, like, anyway, there's not 15 seconds. I think that's one point. I'm good with it.
I think I'll take one cue from what Edel said. Like, we have very, very lean product team because most of our product ideas end up coming from the community. Like, it's like just taking so that's number one. And second is, I think, just being sustainable on our own, because we are very, like, once you have that community flowing, it gives you immense confidence that at least what you build is loved by people. So that's the second thing.
Got it. Couple of questions from the audience. Pooja asks, is there any right path or format to help a community take off? Essentially, how do you seed it? How do you literally get started, right? And is there a nice way to measure the process, essentially?
So I think, and I want to start off with that because there are just very different approaches that we took for 2 very different communities that we built out. When we originally started our Mudrex Discord, which was the first community that we were building out, I think the approach that we took was this relentless outreach, and especially outreach to those people who had or were facing problems that our product solved. So we were looking for people who were facing problems and challenges that we solved. We would reach out to them, we would try and understand their problem in more detail, and then genuinely try and help them out. So I think that important part, genuineness and being truly there and not selling your product as such, was very important the first time kicking things off, right? The second time when we were trying to do this for Mesh, I think what became much more important is what we realized, that people don't necessarily come for problems, but they also come in for visions and direction and why you're trying to do this, right? So when we were trying to build out our Mesh.finance, our DeFi community, I think over there the key part was to communicate the vision of what the product is trying to build and what help are we looking from people, and then try and get as many people on board into the community, make them a part of it, and literally build the product out with them, and so on and so forth was the approach. To the extent that today for our DeFi product, we've not hired anyone. We've got front-end folks working from the community, back-end folks working from the community. In fact, literally product managers going and doing POCs by themselves and building out things for our community, all as a part of the community itself.
With it, you want to add on anything?
I mean, few of the processes that we've set to just, go ahead and take help from our community or enhance our community. I mean, one of them is we have this one type form which goes out every single month, and that takes in like two things. One, what are the things that people are super delighted about, and what are the things that they really want as a part of their experience, right? And this has just been a ritual for us over the last 12 months, right? Whatever we've gotten as like things that people are super excited about, we've just doubled down on that in the next month's product roadmap, right? And many times, I mean, some of our best ideas have come from the latter, right? And some of our best monetization ideas have come from the latter, which is like things that people really want extra, right? So for example, our entire upgrade strategy, which is like people buying the course and then buying a second course. So 35% of the people today buy a second course on AirBlack, right? And that entire upgrade strategy has come from the fact that there were some things that people really wanted to do their continued learning on the product. So that's one process which has been a ritual at AirBlack. Apart from that, there is the second process of again, I'll go back to the thread of designing a content calendar. In our case, the content for our paid community is classes that we do, right? So every single weekly class, we do a poll on that particular theme on the next week's class or next month's class, right? So a lot of our class ideas come from the community, right? So that's the second process that has helped us a lot in staying in touch with what our people want. And I mean, it's funny that when we started doing this, we thought, okay, this is something we can do right now because I don't know how this scales, but it has continued with us as we have scaled, and it has become one of those rituals that we have also thought of scaling as the business is scaling right now, right? So this is the second big process, I would say, which has really benefited us a lot. These are the top two that come to my mind, Rahul.
Honestly, I'm a community builder myself, and I have another 1,000 questions. But given we have only 5 more minutes, I'm gonna change the question. I'm gonna ask Naya. Naya, what are some tough rules that maybe? I mean, in fact, this is this is one of my favorite questions because I set very tough rules for the community usually. So what are some tough rules maybe that you all set for your communities that definitely seemed like what the fuck to members initially, but then maybe that's what created them as like the most loyal fans of your products?
So I think it depends. So I think first of all, in terms of setting the tone, right? Because again, like I analogize this a lot to a party, right? You walk into a party, people are dancing, it's a dance party, and you start dancing, right? If you walk into a party, which is a cocktail party, you behave a certain way. So I think our onboarding experience, and therefore the first session of the user is probably in my head the most critical experience that we can create, and that's something that our product managers, our engineers, and our community teams, that's what we really obsess over disproportionately, right? And that sort of sets the tone and behaviors for communities. So when people come in, I think they see two things. One is that, there is no judgment, right? You could be a mother who has a certain way of life, a certain aspiration, a certain values, a system of values, right? You can't pass judgment on other mothers. I think that is very clearly established in the behaviors that, and we don't call it out, but it's about mimicking behaviors, right? So that's the first thing we really sort of are quite anal about, to be honest. And that creates trust, that creates security, that creates openness and candor. I think the second thing is that, however, while opinions matter, given that we have a responsibility as a community, it has to be evidence-based advice as well, right? You can't come in and say, oh, give honey to your like 2-month-old baby, because that's just not right? So we actually have a very large decentralized community moderator tribe, as well as like the doctors moderator tribe, that actually looks at all the advice that's coming out by community members and basically, you know, saying yay or nay, right? Quite actively. And, you know, these things get flagged quite often. Plus, I mean, health and wellness questions anyways get flagged to a panel of experts. So I think these two things we're really anal about. Baki sab, we figured out a way around.
Got it. Edel, with it?
Yeah, so I think, trust is very critical and central to communities, but at the same time, conversation is also very important, right? And a lot of time, a lot of communities I've seen in the past use controversy as a way to drive conversations, right? And I think one of the things that we clearly try and do is stay away from anything like that. And if there are, you know, just opinions being thrown around for the sake of creating chaos, then we try and quarantine that out and monitor and track those folks. I think this is something that we are most particular about, especially because, you know, being a global community, one of the things that become important is sensitivities of people across the world and how do they function and how do they work and so on. So that becomes really important for us. I think that is one thing that we've ensured and make sure that happens properly in our community.
No, that's a very interesting point, because you are dealing with people probably in 80-90 countries. Naya, probably, I'm assuming, you know, they're not only mothers, maybe some single fathers, maybe mothers from different stratas of society. With it, somebody might say that, hey, this is too golden, right? What kind of a ridiculous makeup this is, and somebody might love it. Actually, the you know, somebody might not like the matte looks, and somebody. So it's very interesting that, you know, how you mimic this. How Naya put it very beautifully, right? Like you have to get a behavior mimicked overall, so that maybe you're not poking someone, but at the same time people know that, hey, what are the boundaries, right? Where what is offensive, and you know, where do I get to play? Cool, folks. It's
this is one thing that becomes important is the style of how you communicate of what is right and what is not right. Because a lot of people, when they are coming to a party, they're just trying to figure out what the party is about, right? So so how do you be a good host and tell them what's right and what's not becomes also very important. So that again, otherwise it's fairly easy to get offended in like kind of sort of pseudonymous communities, like how we are.
You know, once you set those house rules going, literally even in the first go onboarding, if it's digital
recording in progress.
We have seen that most people actually comply. I mean, most people are actually figuring it out themselves, and once you set those house rules going, people, and it ends up setting the tone to the entire customer journey, right? So that's been very, very helpful. Yes.
Super cool, folks. It's 7:30. I feel like asking you a million more questions, believe me, and I have so many of them, because once you start building communities, you can relate it to, you know, to things so damn well. So I'm gonna probably pause here. I definitely, you know, I hope we do this more often and we do more chats around community building, because I learned a lot from all of you, and hope so did the audience. Paras, over to you, Big Boss. Thanks again, Edel, Naya, with it. What a pleasure hosting you three. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Rahul.
Thank you so much, folks. And I'll say the founders, I guess, the way you have put things is like, you know, I personally feel that we as a tribe are going in a really nice manner, and I guess there is a long way to go. And really love the insights. Like I'm chatting in the closed group, and people are saying that even after we are watching this, we want a video of this. like how much like that valuable these insights from your side were, because probably that's the first or second time we are hearing the stakeholders talking about the importance of community in their organization, which is really important for the whole ecosystem of community builders right here. And I guess we are all in the rising state. So thank you so much for supporting. And Rahul sir, how to be cool and so intellect at one time, just teach me. And like I just love the way you work, and I love the way you bring out questions out of questions. So amazing. Thank you so much, all of you.